Welcome to 1000 PS TV. Today we've got two retro Kawasaki's with a really long history. We're going to compare them, the Meguro S1 and the W800 from Kawasaki. Stay tuned. So, retro Kawasaki's Meguro. I have to be completely honest, Meguro only really came onto my radar when the Meguro S1 hit the market this year. That's when I actually realized that it's in fact the oldest Japanese motorcycle company. It was founded in 2024, although back then it started out as a metalworking company. It wasn't until 1937 that they began building motorcycles, and this Meguro S1, it actually already existed back in the 1960s. Back then it was called the Meguro 250 SG and the W800. That name also goes back to Meguro, specifically the W. So I did a bit of reading and thought, what was this Meguro all about actually? And of course, the way Japanese motorcycle manufacturing started, it was pretty much like this. They got their hands on the British machines, studied them closely, and instead of just copying them, they refined the technology. They actually made them better than the originals, but the British bikes were always the starting point. So yeah, in the 1960s, Meguro was this premium Japanese manufacturer. They really built classy bikes with what was considered quite a bit of displacement and performance for the time. But then they made a strategic mistake. They switched over to focusing only on small bikes. That was in the early 60s. And that move basically led to their downfall because buyers didn't want that. These small Meguros essentially stayed on the shelves. And on top of that, there was also a long-running strike, a workers' strike. I didn't even know that sort of thing happened in Japan. I only found that out while reading up. But that created such a dramatic situation that Meguro was basically finished. And then Kawasaki Heavy Industries, who at the time didn't yet have a motorcycle division, they simply bought Meguro. They bought out Meguro and started producing motorcycles themselves. One you might remember is the first W650. Actually, I think it was called the W1 back then. That was in the 1960s. And that's more or less the ancestor of today's W800. Now, the W800 or W850, we're only going to touch on that briefly today, since we already rode it thoroughly last year. This is the final edition, which is no longer being produced. There are only leftover units left to buy in 2025, Euro 5, not Euro 5 Plus. So yeah, it's officially done. They're only selling off the already built stock. And I rode it loads last year. It's a 48 horsepower bike, so it fits in the A2 category, but it's an unbelievably relaxing quality machine. Honestly, I really enjoyed it. It actually gave me a real sense of pride in ownership, I have to say. Even though the performance on paper might seem modest, just for the record, the top speed I saw on the speedo was 178, and that was it. But for me, that was absolutely enough. It's just a stunning retro bike that rides really well. Yeah. And this Meguro, the Meguro S1, well, that absolutely applies here too. It's gorgeous, it's really well built, extremely high quality finish. And that's the thing, the proud Japanese builder doesn't slap plastic mudguards on his retro bike. No, this is all metal. Even in this smaller class, in the 250 category, we've got beautifully crafted spoked wheels. And of course, we're not talking about an engine here that's going to blow your mind, because that's not what it's meant for. So what is this Meguro S1 actually made for? I think it's just an incredibly approachable bike for people who aren't chasing maximum performance. It's more like maybe a kind of antidote to the smartphone world. You've got this mechanical thing pushing you through the world, something that brings you real joy, something that genuinely relaxes your soul and clears your head. And that's something this bike does incredibly well. If you're the competitive type, then this is definitely not for you. Let's just get that out of the way for the sake of accuracy. So what's in there? An air-cooled 250 engine. To be exact, 233 cubic centimeters. We've got 18 horsepower and 18 Newton meters of torque. And we've got a 6-speed gearbox. I think, I'm actually not completely sure, it might be a 5-speed, I don't know for certain, but in any case, It's a gearbox that shifts beautifully, totally fine, and the engine itself is worthy, a proper motorcycle engine, but more of a motor for cruising, for taking in the world while riding, and it does that really well. What really surprised me though, it actually works brilliantly from 4,000 revs upwards. These kinds of engines usually have a natural rev range where you as the rider can feel, yeah, this is where it wants to be, and it definitely doesn't want to be under 4,000 revs. Now some might think, oh mate, that's a seriously high rev range for a bike like this. But it's not, actually. You never get the feeling that it's revving too high, even though you've got quite a broad usable range from 4,000 up to 9,000 revs. You can ride it really well in that zone. Below 3,000, especially in a higher gear, it might start to stutter a bit, just that typical single cylinder behavior. So yeah, if you get the impression like, oh man, under 4,000 is a nightmare, that's normal. But again, this bike is miles away from being a high revving screamer. No, it's got a rather bassy, deep sound at those 4,000 revs. And you actually feel like it's doing more like 2,000 revs, but it's not, unless the rev counter's off, which I don't think it is. And then what really stands out is the feeling you get in the saddle. I thought, well, 18 horsepower, nice and all, but when you go uphill, surely you'll be starving for power. Nope, that didn't happen. I wasn't starving. Maybe if you're riding two up the Großglockner Pass, then yeah, it could get a bit tight. But first of all, I didn't do that. And second, if it ever comes to that, well, you just have to compromise a bit and go a little slower. One fantastic feature is the low weight. I think it's 143 kilos. And then there's the very low seat height, 740 millimeters. So that makes this bike incredibly accessible, especially for people who don't have super long legs. So there's really no need to be afraid of the Meguro. I mean, sure, you could probably crash with this bike too, but you'd really have to put some effort into it. By nature, it's not a bike that wants to fall over. I'm quite sure anyone can handle it. Up front, for example, we've got a really narrow tire, a 110 on an 18-inch wheel, and at the back, it's a 120 on a 17-inch wheel. And I've got to say, spot on. Really pleasant tires, which means even on poor road surfaces, it holds up quite well. And I have to say, the suspension, well, up front, we don't have the best fork in the world, just a 39mm telescopic fork. And at the back, we've got these shocks. Yeah, pretty rustic twin shocks, but they really fit the character perfectly. I found it genuinely great to ride, even on rough roads. Honestly, really great to ride. As I said, you're not going to go racing on it, but still. Now, the only slightly serious point with this Meguro is the price. We're looking at 5,600 euros. That's quite a bit of money for a 250 with 18 horsepower, but it's built to such a high standard. And it's so much fun to ride. You just get such a good feeling from it that I think, yeah, it's worth it. By the way, there's a Kawasaki version of this bike. What's it called? W230. W230 is basically technically identical. It doesn't have the beautifully chromed tank though, and it doesn't have that absolutely gorgeous Meguro logo. It's not just some sticker, it's a real three-dimensional metal badge. Really well done. I think the seat on the Meguro might also be a bit more premium, otherwise they're technically the same, and the Kawasaki W230 costs about 600 euros less. All in all, I've got to say, I think it's fantastic that something like this exists today. I believe there are plenty of people out there who will buy one, because on the one hand, you've got genuine Kawasaki quality, and on the other, it's a truly beautiful retro motorcycle that really relaxes your soul. If life's getting hectic, if the pressure's on, and if you're already stuck in that smartphone trap, well, this thing slows everything down in a way that honestly makes you feel blissful in the truest sense of the word. And for anyone who, after riding the Meguro S1, starts thinking, I wouldn't mind a bit more, well, there's always the W800. The W800 does sit in a different price bracket though. That one costs 10,100 euros if I'm not mistaken. These prices are for Austria, by the way. But yeah, that's a big step up, and it's also significantly more powerful and noticeably heavier. That one's got 220 kilos. Right, my friends? A massive thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments below if you're more the Meguro type or if you'd rather go for the W800, or maybe both are too weak for you. So, thumbs up please, subscribe to the channel, and cheers. Take care. See you.